Hello, and welcome back to Writers, Readers, and the Stories We Love. Welcome to 2021, which somehow came in a flash and took forever to get here. But we are happy to be back. Daien, also welcome back to the
Thank you.
series.
Thank you. I'm excited.
For those who are joining us for the first time, Daien and I are co-running this, and we are very, very happy to have with us today KT Bryski, Toronto dweller, writer, fantasy author, podcaster, historian, beer expert extraordinaire. Katie is actually one of the first people I think I met when I started the Stonecoast program. So it's really
Um,
fun to have her with us today to talk about a variety of different things. So we'll be getting to conversation and questions and stuff in a little bit, but um, before we do that, I want to give Katie the opportunity to share some of her work, especially if you haven't heard it before. You're in for a treat. So, Katie, I will turn it over to you to say hi, read your story, and then we'll go from there.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you, Diane, for that really kind introduction. I'm just sitting here blushing a little bit. And I'm so glad to be able to have the chance to be here and hang out with you both. We were saying just before the stream started, we would normally be getting together for BossCon right around now. So I'm glad we get to have our midwinter chat together. I'm just going to read a little bit from a story that appeared in Lightspeed magazine this past summer. It's called The Bone-Stag Walks, and it is about a horrifying deer. So, just a short story, I'm going to read the first few scenes, and let's get going. The bone-stag walks at midwinter, sharp-antlered, hard-hooved. Deep white snow spreads under deep black sky. Cold air slices lungs. Rivers stand as stone. Over cresting drifts comes the bone-stag, leaving no mark of his passing. Down in the village, they draw their curtains fast against him. They bolt tight their doors. Garlic at the lintels and holly upon the sills. The bone-stag comes like driving snow. His hooves tap upon the roofs. They tap once upon the door. His voice rasps like a shroud dragged over frozen ground. Oxen and boxen and hooves on the roofs. Bring flesh and wine for the starveling deer. The winter I first lived with grandmother, I lived alone in a strange narrow bed not yet mine. Moonlight silvered the unfamiliar room. Shadows opened in the corners like mouths. In the belly of the night, his hooves cracked overhead. Oxen and boxen and hooves on the roofs. Bring flesh and wine for the starveling deer. Through a gap in the curtains, his long skull gleamed. Within the perfect rings of his sockets pulled hungering darkness. Flesh and wine for the starveling deer. His teeth clicked like knitting needles, a stag with the fangs of a wolf. In the morning, the snow beneath my window shone untouched. Even then, grandmother meant fancy with a switch, so I told her nothing. But as the winters fell one upon the next, I could not help but yearn for the heralding tap of his hooves overhead. The first winter Lisa lived with me, I told her, "Never answer the bone-stag. If you answer him, his dry, weathered voice will rasp again and again until your hand opens the door of its own accord. Stay silent, be still. Outwait him until the night is far spent, and his bones crumble to dust in the New Year's dawning." She gawked. "Isn't he hungry? He can share my bread." Such foolishness cannot be left to thrive. It must be starved out before winter comes. She wept through those first nights, her supper freezing on the snow outside her window. Down in the village, their mutterings follow me from butcher to church to general store. Pity about the child. Stuck in that old cabin, stuck with that old woman. It's like growing a rose in ice. Let them murmur. Better my switch than the bone-stag's teeth. And I'm going to stop it there. So if you'd like to see what happens next, you can check that out in Lightspeed magazine. There's also a fantastic podcast version that they released of it. So thank you very much for letting me share that.
No,
Thank you
for sharing it. That was great.
Yeah, and if you get the chance, definitely go read the rest of it. I'm such a big fan of that story. It was a lot of fun to read when it first came out. So
thank you.
Okay, so for anyone who is tuning in live with us today, I will be watching the chat on Facebook. So if you have comments or questions for Katie or for any of us that you want to add in, feel free to drop those in there. There's a slight delay between us and when we see it, but I will get to as many of those as we can as we go. But to start us off, I want to ask generally, and so Katie, partly this is because I've known you for a while, so I know the range of your interest and experience with beer and fashion and history and mythology and folklore and all these different things that you've just had the opportunity to be part of. What is it like as those find their way into your writing? Like, do you go to those things for inspiration for a story, or do they just kind of fall in naturally as you're writing other things? Like, just how does the different pieces of your life come together?
I mean, I think a bit of both, to be honest. I think I tend to write about things that I'm really interested in and things that I love. And it's almost like I get the chance to geek out about my various interests with a captive audience. So yeah, I think sometimes it is just some of that love and that interest spilling over onto the page. Sometimes it is a deliberate choice of, say, like I know what the 19th century looks like. I know what it feels like and smells like and sounds like, so it's easy to set something there. But I also think it's a bit like, okay, so like with wine, the soil that the grapes grow in helps determine the flavor of the wine. I think all of those different interests and parts of us that make us who we are, I think that also just kind of naturally infuses our writing. Because I think that starts to frame what kind of stories you're interested in telling and how you're interested in telling them. So not necessarily deterministic, but I think when we, say to people, write the stories that only you can tell, I think that's part of it. Is saying, what are you passionate about?
Yeah. And I know there's been a discovery, because I remember you talking about like dead deer facts when you were doing some research. And I think that's part of the fun of writing is not only the things that we already know, but the things that are fun to learn about and kind of discover as well.
Yeah, and also sometimes the random things that they just kind of happen, like the dead deer thing. It started as a Twitter joke, and then because one of my friends was talking about English plurals, right? Like it's mouse and mice, but house and houses, and it's not oxen and boxen, it's oxen and boxes. And then she got to hooves and roofs. So we're like, well, hooves on the roof sounds like a story. So I was writing it, and I was looking at like pictures of deer skulls just for a visual reference. And then I learned that some deer have antlers that grow out of their eye sockets. And that just started a whole lot of Googling.
Just went down the rabbit hole.
Yeah. Definitely.
It's always funny when you run across that thing and you just have to stop and stare at it for a second. And you're like, wait, what?
Yeah. I'm trying to picture that, and I'm like, I mean,
you can Google it.
I'm not sure I want to. Really, my
might be
is enough. I think
it's a wise choice. I think. Yeah, they eat songbirds. They've been known to eat like dead human bones. It's pretty horrifying. And then I think it's true. Like also the social media machine, right? It's like you post it, and then other people think it's funny, and so it becomes a whole conversation.
Yeah.
The way Twitter has generated stories sometimes that I've seen, just like that, conversations turn into story fodder, turn into published works. It's such an interesting era of social media and creators and writers, and how all that just kind of blends together.
Yeah, it's a really immediate form of collaboration, isn't it? Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, kind of tying into that, so Josh and I lately have been talking a lot about like our writing process, because we're kind of like in a slump and just trying to figure out things to kind of like get back into it, but then how do we start and all that. So talk a little bit about what your process is like from like the beginning to, you know, the finished piece.
So like initial idea to I
Yeah.
have a final draft. Yeah, so I
Kind of,
think
yeah.
yeah, so it starts I mean, I feel like the ideas can come from anywhere, whether it's Twitter or a piece of music or just something I'm interested in. I find I usually have either like sort of a flash of image or an emotion or there's some kind of hook, but it's not enough to build a story on. So for me, I need to ask myself a lot of questions and kind of noodle it around. And I find the process is a bit different for short fiction versus novels and novellas.
Okay.
With so I'm an outliner. I need to have a plan.
Okay.
I need to have a map. It is okay if we deviate from the route on the map, but I need to kind of know the major landmarks I'm looking for on my destination. So with a short story, I can scrawl that on a cocktail napkin or use one of my many whiteboards to just kind of quickly jot down the arc of the story. And again, I don't have to follow it exactly, but as long as I kind of know the general thrust of where I'm going, it just makes me feel a lot more comfortable. For novels and novellas, it's a lot more, it's almost like drawing an architectural blueprint a little bit. For me anyway, I'm kind of testing out the story beforehand and the characters, so I do a lot of pre-writing and have a pretty thorough outline. And then once I've got all that in place, I can just write. So it's a lot of upfront work, and then the drafting tends to be pretty quick because I know where I'm going.
Yeah. And would you say that's the most difficult part of your process, the outlining, at least for the novels and the novellas? Or something
No,
else?
no, the actual beginning. So I just lied. The beginning of the drafting is actually the hardest part because for me, it's all about voice, right? So if I can't nail the beginning and I can't get the voice right, I can't go forward. I am notorious for every single time, almost everything I've written, getting about a third of the way through and going, I hate it. I hate it. I'm a terrible writer. I suck. And then I throw it all away.
Yeah, I feel like that's common amongst all us writers.
Yeah, but clockwork, a third of the way through, and then I'll just try it again. And sometimes this happens a few times, but eventually I make it, past that. But also having done it a lot, and it's like, okay, I know this is just my 30% freak out. This is fine. This is all part of it. It's gonna be okay. I just need to rewrite the beginning one more time.
Yeah, I think the voice is definitely the toughest part in those first few chapters, and that's why like it'll take me forever to get past those initial like handful of chapters because I'm trying to get it right, because I don't want to write the whole thing and then realize this is not the character, the voice that I wanted. So I know Josh, he's been working on that too with one of his novels.
Has a complete novel draft where the voice isn't right. So
Oh, that's hard.
But I mean, he's made progress, and it's good that like, once you realize it, and sometimes I hate it when it's at the end of a novel, but at least you realized it before.
Yeah.
I find too, Virginia Woolf talks about the wave in the mind. So just sort of that idea, if you can catch on to the right voice and the right rhythm, it is like a wave coming into shore. Like the next word just kind of appears ahead of you, because of course it has to be that word. It couldn't be anything else in that voice. And I read it and was like, stop it, I feel seen, Virginia, just at me next time. But it's very much that feeling, like if you imagine body surfing, if you don't catch the wave right, you just kind of get tumbled over. You don't actually make it all the way to shore.
Yeah.
So for me, that's what that first 30% is just trying to catch that wave in.
So with all the work that you do up front, do you still find yourself doing heavy revision, or do you kind of address some of those bigger problems early on with the outlining and the voice before you get to the end of a draft?
Yeah, I find that's when they tend to come up. I mean, there's always revision.
Right.
Right? Like there's always some. But so far I haven't had like the complete gutting. I've had short stories that I finished and just thrown away because it wasn't worth fixing them. But yeah, for longer form stuff, I mean, touch wood. I don't want to jinx myself, especially as I too am working on a novel right now. But yeah, I try I try to see any big problems in that early stage.
Yeah, I'm always just curious about people's process because I know that I've talked or heard from other people like you who do a lot of the prep work, and then there's pantsers, which I tend to fall into more, who can
Yeah,
get to the end and be like, "There's like a chunk missing in the middle of this book that needs to be fixed," and so, and like in the end, both get there, but it's a very different process sometimes for how that plays out.
for sure. Yeah, and I'm like, I think for the pantsing method too, you must go down some really interesting routes that wouldn't necessarily, I don't know, be as apparent to someone trying to do it up front.
Yeah, I mean, I've definitely discovered stuff on the way that I did not see coming. Like I got there and just realized something that had to happen next.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm also really bad at revision sometimes, where once it's written, I don't want to change it. And so
Right.
I'm slowly teaching myself that skill of like throwing out entire scenes or chapters and making them different if they need to be. Because that's a required skill if you aren't doing a lot of planning, and it's something I'm not always willing to do, but
Even if
getting
you
there.
are planning, though, like
Yeah.
if you're working on something you really want to have this scene or this character and you realize it's not going to serve the story and it's not viable, I think that is something I'm fairly good at, is killing my darlings.
Hmm.
No regrets, very bloodthirsty and ruthless.
Yeah. You playing going left, the characters want to go right.
Yeah, yeah. No, I was sad in the novel I'm working on now. I had this like whole set piece, like 19th century ball scene in my head, and I was gonna make it super queer, and it was gonna be really cool, and it was in my outline. And then I was approaching that point in the story. I was like, this doesn't actually make sense with kind of the way the plot's going so far and the way the characters are developing. Like they were kind of unanimously saying we don't have time for this. I was like, oh, all right, fine. I'll write about my super queer ball some other time.
So in instances like that, will you like if let's say you're halfway through it and the scene is like more towards the end, will you try to find a way where it's reasonable for that to happen, or will you just like straight out take it out of your plan?
I think it depends. For this one, it just
Okay.
doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I just replaced it with something else that did make more sense for the story and the characters and the setting. Um, but yeah, like I definitely, I'm not married to the outlines, right? Like I do a lot of prep work. But if I am in the middle of it and I realize something isn't working, totally fine to revamp things as I go.
I want to be you when I write because I can't do that.
You
Like I'm
can't
so
revamp.
attached to
You
like
can't. Oh,
I'm so attached. Like I've done both, like pantser
yeah.
and like outlining, and it's for like completely different genres, but still with my outlining, it was for the romance. And while it was
Mm,
fine, like I was while I was writing, very conscious about where, like, I made sure that I was going to get to that scene that I
yeah.
wanted because I could not have that scene or like that moment or something. And then, I mean, I have gotten rid of scenes, but I've never deleted them. They're in a separate file because I'm like, one day I'm going to be able to use it, but it takes me, it's so hard for me to like delete. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, I so much time and like effort that I put into this. I can't have been that wrong from the beginning, you know?
Oh,
So like it's hard for me. So I kind of
oh,
want to be you right now. I
oh,
wish it
I
was easy.
deleted it before I even wrote it, so it was easy.
Oh my God.
Changed my mind before I got there. But I think most writers have sort of that file of
Yeah.
cut scenes, the cutting room floor. Because I've done that too.
Hmm. I can't delete it just from existence. Like I can't. I put too
Oh,
much work
well, I
into it,
think
you
too.
know?
It's that axiom, right? Nothing we write is ever wasted. So even if it didn't make it into that book, maybe
Yeah.
either bits of it or at least what you learned from writing it in the first place will make it into another.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
That's
can
fun.
find new form somewhere else.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So kind of going off of the voice that we were talking about, I know because like I've written theater and that's been a fascinating experience
Mm-hmm.
for as a prose writer, and you've done theater and podcasting,
Mm-hmm.
which are very collaborative and performance kind of mediums tied with like the written word on the page. So like how has that shaped the way you write um like fiction with after going through that experience of like handing things off to other people and seeing it performed and stuff like that?
So I've learned a lot from actors. And I've learned a lot from the way that actors approach a script. Because an actor approaches a script the way a musician approaches, like, a score. So they're using everything as a clue to their performance. Like, whether you choose to indicate a pause with an em dash or an ellipsis, they're going to think about, like, well, why is it that way? What does that mean? Like, what does that mean for the character? So I think it's made me be more deliberate about the way that I write sometimes. And also playing with, well, how can I communicate certain emotions? If it's a tense fight scene, for example, I had an actor friend tell me, like, yeah, like, I start looking for really short, punchy sentences because it's like the breath is increasing, the heart rate's increasing. So sort of that link between just language and sound and emotion. It's like, oh, that's a really cool thing if I can incorporate that. Yeah, and then also with actors, too, it's like every action they perform on stage is for a reason. Right? Like, with everything they're trying to accomplish, some goal. So this idea of, yeah, with every movement my characters make or every line of dialogue, it's like, well, what are they trying to do here? So again, yeah, I think it's just a matter of becoming a bit more deliberate sometimes with the way that I write.
Yeah, I know, like, when I've worked on scripts, it was exactly that, like, paying attention to every word and line. I know when I've revised scripts, looking through at some of the dialogue and realizing that, like, 5 lines can be 2 instead. And in prose, it's so much easier to kind of let that slip by, I feel like.
And I think, too, it's also intention. I saw an actor showed me their marked up script once, and for every line that they spoke, they'd added a verb to it. So, like, this verb is, I push. Like, I'm not physically pushing them with this line, but that's what I'm doing with my words, is I'm pushing them away. Or I stab, I caress. And I was like, oh, okay, yeah, like, everything is tied to a goal that you want to accomplish. So yeah, clarifying intention, I think, has been a really big part of working in theater. And I'm just going to broadly loop podcasting into theater as well for the purposes of, like, actors, because it's a very similar process.
Yeah, no, and it's so interesting too. I think in terms of trusting the audience, because that's one thing I've seen handing things to actors, because scripts are sometimes so sparse. And I know one of my plays, when I handed it to actors, like, I was hoping that they would get the intention, and hearing them talk about it at the first read through, and they got everything that I was hoping was there on the page without me saying anything. And so to see that come through, I think it's good, because sometimes it's very easy to over explain and try to make sure everything comes across when the audience is capable of picking up on so much. And I'm trying to keep that in my mind.
And it's necessary too. I think it's a collaboration.
Yeah.
Really, between you and the audience. Like, if they can't bring some of their own self to it, I can't imagine it'd be as engaging for them.
Yeah. And it's funny because I realize as a reader how much I'm willing to fill in, like, into a story where there can be, like, time jumps and, like, nonlinear and subtext and all this stuff. And, like, I'm right there and I can, like, get all of it. And then I go to write a story and I'm like, is this clear enough? I'm not sure. It's funny seeing that difference.
Yeah, but I think it's also being confident in yourself too. Being like, yeah, I am clear.
I kind of want to write a play now. You guys,
do it.
This conversation kind of inspired me. Like, I want to have those, like, moments, and
it's so much fun.
So we'll see. But going a little off this topic, what does your writing schedule look like on a day-to-day? I follow a lot of my favorite authors, like, on social media. Yeah. And sometimes they'll post and they'll be like, oh, 5,000 words this morning. And it's like 8 a.m. And I'm like, I'm sorry, what? So it's always interesting to me to, like, find out how other authors, how do they write every day, or what's their, schedule like?
I mean, flippantly, I want to say, what schedule? Yeah, I mean, it kind of depends. If I'm in the middle of a long form project, it does tend to be most days. If not every day, then most days. I do have a day job, so evenings tend to be my time. I think ever since I started writing, actually, I've gravitated towards night times. Yeah, and then I've been making more use of weekends. But again, I'm kind of geared towards writing at night. So I have been doing like sprints and stuff with people in the day, but I find my brain doesn't really kick on until after the sun goes down. I'm actually a vampire. And
Yeah.
with short fiction, like I can have pretty big gaps in between writing, and I think that's an important thing too, is taking the time to reset.
Yeah, definitely. And then, I mean, the past year has obviously been a
Yeah.
year, so just for lack of a better word. But has that affected your writing habits in any way, or
Yes, but not in the way I think this question was meant to be
okay?
framed.
No,
Um, yeah, so like, yeah, obviously the pandemic has been really, really stressful and it's been really, really hard. I was actually much more preoccupied through the last year with like some stuff going on in my personal life.
Mm.
So when that all kind of collapsed in a fairly spectacular way, it actually made me write more. So I had been struggling with a creative block for like over a year. And then when this happened, it was just like it smashed through that wall. It was just one thing too many, I think. And then my block said, well, I'm out. So yeah, I actually ended up writing a lot more. And people are like, oh, like it's so cool that you can do that. And I'm not sure that that's the case. Like it's a useful side effect. And I think it is empowering to take like grief and anger and hurt and betrayal and turn it into something positive. But yeah, it's been kind of an odd experience, sort of compulsively creating while everything else has been happening.
Yeah.
Don't know that I'd wish it on someone, but yeah, that's been the experience for me over the last year.
Well, that's good writing wise, I guess. My year.
Right? It's like that
Writing-wise,
double-edged sword
yeah.
where it's like
I mean,
on the
yeah.
one hand, I just sold a bunch of stories. On the
Um,
other hand,
yeah. But all right, that's good. I mean, it's good for you.
isn't it right though? Like I think it's fine though for it to look at things like this and be like,
Oh,
yeah,
no, yeah,
that
definitely.
is a mixed blessing. It's
Yeah,
okay for it to be both good and bad at the same time.
definitely. Yeah.
The nice thing with COVID, I feel very grateful within the context of COVID though that like I have been working at home. My job is not terribly affected by the pandemic. My family is safe. I am safe. My friends are safe.
Yeah.
I have a friend that I can see in person, so it's like, all things considered, I recognize my own privilege within this pandemic.
Honestly, all things 2020 considered.
Yeah, not doing too badly.
We made it to 2021, so you know.
Oh, thank
Our years were
God.
better.
Right?
Yeah. Honestly, it's sometimes I'm shocked when I say it's 2021 because I'm like, it's impossible. It's been like 2 months. And then I'm like, no, that was a long year.
Well, this last week alone has already been a whole decade.
Yes.
This
Yeah.
is true.
It has not given me hope for how the rest of the year is going to go. But
Yeah, no, it's been interesting because we've asked multiple people over the course of like running this
Yeah.
series how they've been dealing with writing during this time, and it's like it's on social media and stuff. We're all kind of working through it. And it's been so interesting as we all kind of face that question of like, what does a creative life look like in the middle of all this? And
It's
try-
trauma.
exactly, yeah. It's interesting that you describe your situation because I know early on, like personally and just globally, like similar. There was a lot, and writing. I actually did pretty well with being productive because yeah, I think it was a way to kind of channel stuff, and because I mean I process a lot as I write anyway, so it was very good. And then like these last few weeks, I can hardly even read a book some days, and so it's been very different as things have gone on, and yeah, just trying to find like what am I capable of right now and being okay with that.
Yeah, and I think that's a huge thing too, is just being kind to yourself and recognizing we are all going through a collective trauma right now. And even though I was distracted by other trauma, I know that the pandemic is still affecting me. I've kind of set up for myself like pandemic pace for writing. And it's not as fast or as much as I would be under ideal circumstances, but that's okay. It's a pandemic. If you're still upright some of the time and moving forward, you're ahead of the game.
Yeah. I remember when we first went into this whole like lockdown in March, I was so excited because I was like, yes, working from home. Like I'm gonna have so much time to write now. Because I would write a lot like at work sometimes and it was like down periods. And I was like, I'm gonna be home all day. All I can do is like write. I don't think I've written a single page in the whole year. Because it's just I couldn't like mentally I couldn't like focus on it. So
well, there's that Onion article that was going around earlier of like, man shocked to find that, you know, a public health emergency was not the most productive time of his life. It's like, I don't know what it says about us though, that we all kind of looked at a public health emergency and said, yeah, I'm gonna be super productive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like,
I think it's because like also at the beginning it was so like downplayed and you know we didn't take it seriously for the most part. It was like, oh, okay, a couple weeks and then, you know, we'll be back to normal.
Yeah,
those couple weeks
2-week like holiday.
3, yeah. And then just like a month. And then again, like those first couple of months, it was great because I was like, when am I going to have like a 2-month vacation basically to just stay at home? Because I love staying I'm a homebody. So like being at home has been amazing.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just like, it kept going and I got more stressed and just like everyone obviously around me got more stressed too, and it was a lot to handle, and I couldn't mentally. So hopefully this year will look up writing wise for me. But
we've never had to handle something like this before.
Yeah,
like we've never had to create in these sort of circumstances. So I think we're all learning how to do it, and I think we're all learning, how to create, but also just how to be again. And it's frightening sometimes when you're so used to being able to work a certain way and then suddenly it doesn't work that way anymore.
Yeah.
So much of what was normal has gotten upended for good and bad, I think, over the course of this. So it'll be interesting on the other side of it, seeing what things look like.
And like we'll get there.
Yeah, we will.
Our job is to make it to 2022.
Yes.
That's really the only job we have right now.
That's my only goal for this year, to just make it a 2022 in one piece.
But seriously, that's it. That's the goal.
Yeah.
So if you do that, like, I don't know, give yourself cake. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll have the cake. I'll remember that.
Have both.
Have cake.
Have both.
It's pandemic times. 2022, I'll have some cake and be like, I made it.
Okay, so this is shifting topics a little bit away from schedules and stuff, but I know, Katie, that you play with like form and like nonlinear and bring in sometimes familiar tropes and elements and really kind of play with what they look like and how they're presented. And so like what's your process kind of look like in terms of form and content when you are twisting or reimagining something? Like, do you know what you want those things to be going into the story, or is it a story idea and then you realize what the form could be?
So one of the really great things about Stonecoast was that it exposed me to a lot of different forms and subversions, and also with a lot of the like packages that we do, or we'd submit our pages that we'd written that month. I had a really great time experimenting. So at that point I'd kind of set out and say, I'm gonna write a list story this time. I'm gonna write like a fairy tale subversion. So I'd go out quite deliberately, and I think that was quite good for developing my muscles, as it were. It's like, today is leg day. Aw, yeah. I find now, maybe I should still keep doing that and stay in like writer shape, I don't know, but I find now it's a story idea first, and then the question I always ask myself is, what is the way to tell, how does the story need to be told? And again, I think this is some of that like pre-writing noodling, where I'm very unlikely to take the first idea that comes, or it's like really pushing and turning it inside out and upside down and saying, well, I could do that, but what if I tried it this way instead? Like the Bone-Stag Walks, the story I started with, it's weird because it's in like 3 different voices and they all sort of interweave, but that was the only way really to tell the story that I wanted to tell. So yeah, I guess it's like constantly just kind of pushing and prodding and saying, well, is this the best way to tell this story? Or is there a different and better way? And not being afraid, I think, to pull in ideas, even if they seem ridiculous or unworkable. It's like, but let's just test it though. Let's just try.
Yeah. No, and I know, like, I've seen some of your stories that have been in forms that I never would have expected. And I always just love seeing what writers come up with, like the creative new ways to tell something. And I'm also always very fascinated with like subverting tropes and ideas, because I know like the Love It Bears Fair Maidens.
Ah, yes.
The first time you read that was such a different take on like unicorn mythology that I had never even conceptualized, but then hearing it, and it made total sense and created such a fascinating story to take something that was familiar and make it different.
Sometimes I just like to make things creepy. Or queer, or both. Yeah, and I find sometimes this can be helpful as sort of an idea generator too. Like if I listen to a piece of music or something, and it's like, okay, well, what if this was from, I don't know, a villain's perspective? Like, what if it was the same words but a different intention behind them? So yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head when you say playing, because that all it is what it is. It's being willing to be that person kind of standing outside and being like, but what if we tried it this way though? Yeah, and also not shying away from, I guess, some of those observations, like, wow, yeah, unicorns. We all see the uncomfortable symbolism, right? No, just me. Cool. I'm gonna write me a story about that then. It's an Apex magazine if anyone would like to follow up on it. Trigger warnings for uncomfortable imagery.
And we can find all that on your website,
involving
right?
horns. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, ktbryski.com.
There you go. So obviously we've been talking for like 40 minutes about how much work goes into our writing. Has there been a moment, like, at the publishing stage or something, where it's just like super fulfilling, or makes you feel like this is why, like, I do this? One of those.
Yeah, I was thinking about this. So last year I had a story come out in Podcastle called By Jingly Bell by Velvet Mouse. And it's about a cat who, when his owner is away, he rearranges his toys on the floor into different patterns, and then she comes home. So obviously it's magic, and he's a wizard cat. So this is great until one day his owner doesn't come back, because she's dead. And so the story is the cat just like spending the rest of his life trying out different patterns and trying to bring her back. And then at the end, he's also dead. So super cheerful story. But I got an email from a vet after it was published, and she was saying, I had to put a cat down today, and your story was really beautiful and it made me cry, and cats are so amazing, and I just wanted to thank you for, I guess, putting this story out there at a time when it was really important to me. And yeah, I'm
That's making me emotional.
I know, I got it at work, and I'm just like sitting in this boardroom, like crying subtly in the corner.
Yeah, I would have.
But yeah, that sense of connection with someone, and that feeling of like this complete stranger, right? That we were able to connect over something, and then she reached out on top of that.
Exactly. That's like the.
Yeah, so just this kind of feeling of like, I don't know, being able to touch each other across the void and have that sort of fellowship. And for me, that's what makes it worth it, when it's like, this intangible thing that came out of my brain.
Yeah.
And your brain and your heart, and we found each other, and they found each other, and we're all humans in this dark and scary void together. Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that. I'm actually emotional.
I know. I had to go home and just like hug my cat.
Yeah.
Trigger warning for pet death in that one, but it's also on my website.
I'm probably gonna go read that as soon as we get off and just cry some more.
If you have a cat, like, make sure it's close by and just pet it as you read it.
I don't. I had a dog. He passed away a few months ago, but I'll
I'm
probably
sorry.
read it and just pretend it's a dog in the story and cry anyway. So
Yeah, no, that's one of the great and I think fascinating things about writing is even from the reader's side, when you come across that story that feels like it was written for you, like in
Yeah.
that exact moment, and you're like, this is my brain, and somebody else put the words on the page to describe exactly what I'm thinking right now.
Cat Howard does that a lot for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, I like how you put it, just that reaching across the void and that connection with someone who oftentimes you've never even met, but we still
Oh.
share that moment.
Yeah, that's the thing. We shared it. Even across time and distance and, you know, moving in completely different social groups. So,
It's
yeah.
magical.
It is. It is. So yeah, that's the fulfilling part. That's why I write.
Okay, so similar to that, but I think like so many of us started out as storytellers and started with reading and all the
Mm-hmm.
various things that drew us into um, being writers. But so often, like, we don't fully have an understanding of what that life is like until we get here and we're trying to figure it out day by day. What is something that you've discovered about writing, good, bad, challenging, just weird, maybe, that you never expected, like when you were first starting doing this?
I guess the fact that it's not just writing. That's one part of it, but I think writing and authoring are two different jobs. And you can't have the authoring without the writing part, but there's also the other aspects. So like this, for example, what we are doing right now, both you guys as the hosts and me coming on to chat with you. Um, yeah, the sort of it's an interesting industry sometimes because the work and the socializing can kind of happen at the same time, which is really cool. Um, but yeah, it's not just writing; it's also the promotion and brand and all of that marketing stuff. But I'm like, oh, that's not my favorite thing, but it is part of the job,
Hmm.
um, as much as the actual writing is. So I guess yeah, being aware of the other skill sets that get involved and that you cultivate along the way.
Because we all love writing query letters, right? Everybody's favorite thing.
So
don't even
good.
get started.
But like, it's not a bad thing. It's just when I was 14, scribbling in a notebook by hand. Um, I wasn't quite thinking that far ahead.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, I've really enjoyed it, and sometimes when I look back, it's like, wow, like you really do learn a lot quite quickly. And this fair, I'm sure you guys as well, like looking back to when you first entered Stonecoast versus now. I'm sure you've learned tons.
Hmm.
And probably stuff that I don't realize I learned, and it'll come up when I'm writing the next book, and I'll be like, oh, huh, interesting.
Well, even just that, like, oh yeah, query letters. Yeah, I've got that. I know what those are. I know how to
I
make
know
them
what those
work.
are. Those are torture. I would rather write a like 500-page book than have to write a query letter. I hate it. So I don't know. It's like 300 words that you have to write. That's it. But I would rather write a 500-page novel than have to write a query letter.
It is hard to distill everything down.
Yeah. I'm
For
like
sure.
I either like I can't summarize it down or like I'm like I don't know. It stresses me out. So
I think it's such a learned skill too. And I think that's part of what it is we're just starting because I know we both got like our first novels that we're trying to market, and so trying to sit down and be like, okay, how do we do this? It's
yeah.
starting from scratch almost with a new form.
Mm-hmm.
And the worst part are the responses you get to your query letter, where like it doesn't tell you if it was good or bad. It's just like no. So you don't know if you have to go back and work on it or not.
So,
So
please
But
try
like
again
with
later.
querying,
anything, practice, I guess, right?
Yeah.
Um, I don't know. Pre
Yeah. No.
Stonecoast, yeah. I hadn't really written short fiction before Stonecoast, and then I I didn't like workshopping novel chapters because I found it difficult. So I was like, I'm just gonna do short stories instead, and I'll teach myself how to do it. So
How did you do it? Because I tried and I failed miserably.
teaching myself to write short fiction.
Yeah,
I
I tried.
read a lot of short fiction.
Okay.
My second semester was very much my gleeful experiment semester. So I worked with Nancy Holder, and I was like, I'm just gonna try a whole bunch of different things. And she was like, that's great, I'll be right here. So working with her was amazing because I felt comfortable to be like, I'm gonna try this completely off the wall, like, approach to form, or I'm gonna try this, and just by practicing a lot and writing a lot of really bad stories, and taking notes on stories I read that were really good, I started to get the hang of it and really enjoy it. Short stories are fun because they're so small.
Yeah.
You have to fit everything in like 5,000 words. That's really it's hard.
I know it's hard because I tried, and my little short story idea turned into a 3-novel fantasy thing in my head. So
I mean, now you've got a 3-novel fantasy thing, which is also pretty cool. But for me, it's like haiku, I guess, or it's like, it's so short, but it contains everything.
yeah.
It's kind of fun. Maybe I'm just weird. That's the sense I'm getting here.
Well,
No, not weird.
A glutton for
I
punishment.
quit too easily because I loved it was like that one short story. I think it was for one of David's sections. And I was like, oh, this is going to be great. It's going to be super short. And it wasn't. It wasn't. I couldn't fit everything in there. And then my brain just likes to like go crazy with the ideas. And like I said, 3-book story. So, and I didn't try since then because I was like, I can't do it. I can't write short stories, much less like flash fiction. So
I believe in you. It may not be your
I'm
preferred
glad you
form.
do.
I believe
One
in
of us
you.
here believes in me.
I believe in you.
I know you mentioned earlier that you're working on something. Can you tell us what you're working on?
Yes, I'm working on a novel. It's about Victorian body snatching. Not the like invasion of the body snatchers, aliens type of body snatching. The black market of digging up and selling fresh corpses.
Oh, fun.
Yeah, it's always a barrel of laughs with my fiction. There's also fairies, and I'm having a really fun time.
Are there unicorns?
No. Not
They're
this.
dragons.
No, it's just fairies.
Okay. Well,
So
fairy
far.
dragons.
And corpses. Like magically reanimated corpses, so that's fun.
Are you early in the process or?
I'm about 2/3 of the way through now,
Okay.
so
Good.
it's coming. Like I told my agent, I'm gonna have to hold myself accountable. I told my agent February for a first draft, with the understanding that right now it's a bit of a hot mess, so I'm gonna have to take a hatchet to it myself first before anyone else sees it.
You work better on deadlines than just like.
I mean, I set deadlines for myself, so I feel like it's kind of moot.
And you stick to them?
Yeah, there'll be a deadline somewhere.
Yeah.
It's
I
just
admire you so much.
just
I
whether it's.
admire you so much.
I mean, the flexible deadlines, pandemic pace, but yeah. I'd like it to be done by February because I have other things I want to write too.
Mm-hmm.
So I do kind of want to clear the decks a little bit.
Yeah, no, and I don't think you're weird as a short story writer. You happen to be talking to 2 novelists right now.
Yeah.
We've both talked about how we want to write shorter, and just everything turns into a novella or a novel.
Those are fun too. I think I like to do a mix.
They are, yeah. No, and it's funny because I've read short stories that are 2,000, 5,000 words and carry just such an emotional impact. Like I've seen what the short form can do. And I've written short stories I'm happy with, but being able to do that more and better is something that I know I definitely want to work on, because I've seen what it's capable of, and it does look like so much fun, like you said, to fit everything into that space and to just do something remarkable with it.
It's satisfying in a different way. It very much is like a sprint versus a marathon kind of satisfaction. Like, okay, I'm not a runner, so when I say this is like all hypothetical, but like when you finish a sprint, right, like that kind of tiredness, I imagine, is it must be satisfying. People look happy when they finish races or whatever. Versus a marathon, and it's like, it's different muscles, it's different intentions, and it is different types of satisfaction. But yeah, I enjoy them both. I want to do a novelette this year. That's a form I haven't made it to yet.
I have one story I think is a novelette, but I know there's competing opinions on exactly how long that is. So
I'm like hoping to do something around 10,000 words.
Okay, yeah.
That's novelette. Mostly because I haven't done it yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I want to try.
Yeah, it's a fun length.
Yeah.
So this is backing up a little bit, but Claire in the comments was wondering, 'cause I know you've done a little bit more on the publishing side of things. Do you have any insight as to how to make querying easier or potentially more fun?
Like for novels?
I
guess
yeah,
so.
I think
What else?
yeah, this would mostly be for novels or maybe even like agent hunting or editors.
I don't know if I have a way to make it more easier or more fun. I guess you could give yourself a sticker after like every 10 or a reward. I think that is a thing though. Yeah, reward yourself.
With cake. No,
Yeah,
cake
with
is better.
cake and stickers and glitter. Yeah, I don't know how to make it easier or fun. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, that's fine because I haven't done a lot with querying, but I know for other things, even just like writing regularly, I think you're right. That seems to be the case is small goals and then celebration of reward when meeting them and
Yeah.
just doing that regularly.
Smart goals.
Yeah.
Really, yeah. Be like, I don't know, if you want to send it out to X places or, write the query letter by X date. But
Claire says great idea. So she likes the
yay!
rewards as well.
I'm glad. Good luck, Claire. I hope it goes well.
Okay, so we are winding down on time. But we've got one kind of question that we tend to wrap these up with, just generally, and this can be movies, books, television, music, video games, any form of storytelling whatsoever. But what are one or a couple things that you've really enjoyed recently?
So I just finished Black Sun by Rebecca Rowanhorse.
Mm-hmm.
It's really good. It's really good, and it's also got one of the most powerful first chapters I've seen in a while. Like it's a sucker punch, but in the best way. And also just a mastercraft in world building.
Oh, cool.
So
I've been hearing good things about that book. I haven't actually read it myself yet.
it is really, really good.
I'm gonna add it to my to-read list.
There you go. So yeah, that's my recommendation. I was really happy I got it for Christmas and just tore through it like before I went back for work.
There's been some really good stuff coming out in the past like 6 months to a year as well. Like pandemic aside, spec fic publishing is doing really cool work.
Yeah, it really is. It's really good to see. And I know there's a few things on my to-read list for 2021. So
Anything in particular stand out?
yeah, so my friend Derek Kunskin, his novel House of Sticks, it's already out in e-format, but it will be coming in paper format later this year. And I can't read books on screens. Not even my own, my eyes go loogie. So I'm really excited to be able to read that. Yeah. It sticks with a Y.
Okay.
Like the river. It's set on Venus.
Oh, cool.
Huh. Interesting.
What about you, Daien? Any recommendations that we want to toss out to our viewers?
I mean, if you guys haven't watched Bridgerton, so I know Josh did, and I don't know. I've been reading some books, but they're part of like a series and stuff like that. But I am looking forward to Sarah J. Maas's book that comes out really, really soon. Like I'm so excited. She had a talk yesterday, which was really cool, and it just made me even more excited. I can't wait for it to come out. But yeah, I don't know. It's been like I've been busy. I was really busy last month, and so there wasn't a lot of time for reading and and watching TV and stuff, but I'm more than making up for it now. So
Nice.
yeah.
How about you, Josh?
Yeah. Well, so this isn't novel, but I recently read Benjamin Percy's Thrill Me, which is his collection of essays on writing, which I had never picked up before. And it is one of, I think, my favorite kind of craft discussions that I've come across. Are you familiar with it at all?
I have not. I'm gonna look it up afterwards, though.
This is one you
Yeah,
told me about, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
And so he's an interesting one where he went into writing school wanting to write genre, like so many of us do, like dragons and adventure and stuff like that. And he had the writing teachers that were like, no genre. And so he was kind of pushed over into literary fiction and spent a lot of time there and like published literary and was in the journals and really kind of embraced it. And then after a while realized he was kind of bored with it. And so where he's arrived at is he kind of sees the best and the worst of both streams of thinking. And so in the book, he really kind of talks about that, where he's got like the finely honed craft and character and some of the things that are very often hallmarks of like the literary. But then he also loves like Jaws and drama and aliens and like whatever you want to do. And so the collection, and he talks about character and tension and a lot of kind of the basic things, but in this really accessible and really kind of comprehensive way. That was just, it was fun to read. And every essay in there, like I was picking up new cool things to think about for my own writing. So
That sounds great.
yeah, no, it was
Look
it was fun. Like someone mentioned it on Twitter. I was like, hey, I'll go check that out, and it was super fun to go through.
Awesome.
And then I also will pitch very quickly WandaVision, which just debuted. The new Marvel show on Disney Plus. Because now Marvel is established enough that they can just get weird, and the show is very, very weird, and it is very happily weird, which is fun to see because it's not like any of the normal superhero stuff. But they're just it's like black and white 50s sitcoms and like existential dread and superheroes and all this stuff at once. And I like when people commit to a vision and they just tell the story they want to tell.
Exactly.
And that's very much what this is doing. So I'm curious to see where it goes.
I just want happily weird on a bumper sticker or a t-shirt. I think that sums up things quite well.
It's the slogan for so many writers, I think.
I think so.
Yeah.
And good.
Okay, well, we're almost done. Katie, any final thoughts you want to leave us with, or?
Just to say thank you again for making the time to sit down. It was really good to see you both and to reach across the void in these times. And yeah, just, I don't know. I think we all need really good stories right now. So I hope you guys, whenever is watching, like we all got to keep trucking. We just got to make it to the next bit.
Yeah. We just got to make it to 2022.
Just got to do the work. Do the work, be kind, and be nice to yourself, too.
Yes.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you to everyone who tuned in. If you find this later or you came in partway through, it will be up on Facebook and on my YouTube channel after the fact, so feel free to watch, share. Check out Katie's website. I've linked it in the description here, so go read her work because it's awesome.
Can I also plug my reading series?
Please, feel free.
So the Ephemera reading series has its January event on Wednesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on our YouTube channel, which is Ephemera Reading Series. So if you enjoy authors reading speculative fiction and speculative performance, come check us out.
And I will drop that link in the comments as well after we're done here, so you can go find it directly.
Thank you.
Yeah. But yeah, Katie, thank you for coming. This has been so much fun. I can't believe it's been almost a year since Boscone when we were last hanging out. But
I can't believe it.
Back when we were all hanging out in a hotel lobby without a care in the world.
I flew to another country on an airplane. It seems very surreal now.
It does.
To hang out with several hundred strangers in a crowded indoor space. It was fine.
Yeah, it was so good to see you again. So yeah, thank you to everyone who tuned in. Daien and I will be back next month with more fun, more writing. And until then, everyone stay safe and, like he said, be good to each other and enjoy your stories.